Better Call Saul is a prime example of a very special case on how to do a prequel spin-off show correctly. With everything working against it since day one, it's proven itself to be one of the strongest shows in television, along with showing how you shouldn't always judge a spin-off by its cover. Hey guys, Kiwi here, warning of spoilers for all of Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul. In this video, I'll be breaking down some of the many reasons as to why Better Call Saul is such a successful prequel show. Like the video if you end up enjoying it, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter for more Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad content. With that being said, let's jump into the breakdown. Prequel and spin-off shows usually have this unspoken stigma around them that makes it easy to get a bad first impression of them. They can be seen as cash grabs due to them being an easy way to piggyback off of the success of an original IP that came before it. Sometimes they're done well, but usually it's just a lazy attempt to capitalize off of being in the spotlight, at least that's what people usually expect. It's also extremely difficult for a spin-off show to learn how to stand on its own 2 feet instead of just living in the original shadow. This is especially true when it comes to a prequel show, in regard to already knowing what comes after from the original. How can the journey ever be as interesting when you already know where it ends up? Plus, when the original is so good, many hardcore fans don't like the idea of the IP potentially being tainted by bad sequels or spin-off shows. This could be described as a fear of sequelitis. Due to all these reasons, when spin-offs/prequels are announced, they have a lot already going against them before they even have a chance to air. Then, when they do release, they instantly have a lot to prove in order to break out of that spin-off stigma mold. It feels like a guilty until proven innocent situation where many go into a spin-off/prequel show almost expecting it to be bad until proven otherwise. Ever since Better Call Saul was announced, it had a lot to live up to when it came to its older brother, that is Breaking Bad, with many skeptical about if it was even necessary or not. So, how did Better Call Saul deal with negative stigma around spin-off and prequel shows, and how did it break the mold of lazy cash grabs and evolve into its own masterpiece that stands alongside the original show? Stick around as we discuss exactly how the creators of Better Call Saul did prequels right, and why it should be acknowledged and analyzed as a perfect case study for any writers that may want to create spin-off shows in the future. Shows like Better Call Saul or House of the Dragon could be a turning point as main examples to prove that we shouldn't automatically assume spin-off or prequel shows will be lazy and bad and actually give them more of a chance from now on. So as I said, back when Better Call Saul was first announced, many were skeptical about it. Was it just another cash grab, or was it gonna live up to Breaking Bad? Many became weary of whether Better Call Saul should even happen or not, as it was announced around the time Season 5 Part 2 of Breaking Bad was airing. Needless to say, the odds were against it before it even had a chance to show itself. Since Breaking Bad ended so perfectly while concluding with only 5 seasons that just got better and better until the ending, many praised it for the masterpiece that it was and still is, and didn't like the idea of potentially harmful spin-off shows ruining its good name. Breaking Bad is one of the best shows of all time, and with that in mind, the creators did a great job handling the pressure potentially outdoing Breaking Bad itself. Due to Breaking Bad being such a success during its final few seasons, AMC begged the Breaking Bad creators to extend the show, but Vince was firm in his goals to have Breaking Bad end with just 5 seasons, concluding the story in the way that he originally intended. It's extremely noble of the show creators to end Breaking Bad in the way they originally intended instead of sticking around for too long, as many successful shows have a classic rise and fall of going on longer than they should have due to wanting to milk its own success. Since Breaking Bad ended with only 5 seasons instead of being extended, it's no surprise that AMC would want to offer the Breaking Bad creators a chance to create a spin-off show to keep the ball rolling. In fear of having a cheap or shallow premise, the creators thought deeply about what would be worthy of adding to the Breaking Bad universe. Vince did self-impose a ton of pressure on himself in regard to living up to the Breaking Bad legacy, as there's a ton of baggage that comes with creating anything new within the Breaking Bad universe. Ever since Vince first thought of creating Better Call Saul, he wanted it to evolve in a way where it could escape the shadow of Breaking Bad. Vince will only expand upon the Breaking Bad universe if he feels like he has a new story worth telling, and it took him a lot of talking and reflection before he was confident in Better Call Saul having enough story with its characters to be worth doing. Better Call Saul was created with the premise of what does being Saul Goodman solve, which is a question that receives various connecting answers throughout the show from Season 1 to Season 3 all the way to Season 6 and its conclusion. Since we know that Jimmy survives and eventually turns into Saul, the show isn't based around if he'll survive or if he becomes Saul. It turns into what does becoming Saul mean for his character, along with what happens to the people that he loves when he goes down this dark path and how do they influence it. Although the first season of Better Call Saul was very much the show trying to figure itself out, it was still a strong season that proved it had its own initiative, and with each subsequent season getting better than the last, it became clear to see that Better Call Saul would follow in the successful footprints of Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad was a show that got better and better throughout the run of itself, and Better Call Saul was looking to do the same. Just like with Breaking Bad, the longer that Better Call Saul was on the air, the more its fanbase grew as the show continued to prove itself as something worth getting invested in. Throughout the creation of Better Call Saul, it respected itself for keeping within the confines of the rules of the original show. The thing is, when creating a prequel show, it can be incredibly hard to make a captivating narrative while also staying true to the source material. Since Better Call Saul was taking place 4 to 6 years before Breaking Bad happened, not only did the creators know where the timeline would eventually lead, they had to make sure to work within the confines that the original show created, which is a huge problem that some prequel shows have. They needed to make sure that they didn't create any plot holes or immersion-breaking issues within its own lore. For example, this meant that they couldn't have characters meet who wouldn't have known each other before the events of Breaking Bad, or characters doing criminal activities that didn't actually become criminals until Breaking Bad started. This proved to be a great difficulty throughout the writing process, but the creators designated a few writers to rewatch all of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul every time they started creating a new season to make sure that all their facts within the timeline all lined up properly as they should. This thorough analysis of their own work proved to be worth it in the long run, as Better Call Saul seamlessly slipped into the Breaking Bad universe to expand it without contradicting anything that was already set in stone. This allowed them to elevate the existing Breaking Bad story by adding more subtext to what we already know and love. Better Call Saul became a great companion piece alongside Breaking Bad due to adding so much more meaning to what Breaking Bad already created. Many events that happened in Breaking Bad are now elevated with more important subtext due to what Better Call Saul added to its lore and world building. Better Call Saul made many subtle nods and Easter eggs towards Breaking Bad, but did so in a respectful way that wasn't just giving fan service for the sake of it. Just like with Breaking Bad, everything that's shown within Better Call Saul is there for a reason. From the characters and what they do or what they say, to the set designs, the props they use, or even the cinematography and the music score, all help elevate the show with the same high standards of Breaking Bad and even beyond. By doing this, not only does Better Call Saul give constant homages to the original, but it also sets itself up to have its own significant undertones and deeper meanings throughout the many Easter eggs and hidden details that they create. It's the perfect combination of giving respect to what came before it, while also being able to make a name for itself at the same time. When discussing Better Call Saul, it's hard to not compare it to its older brother that is Breaking Bad, as I've been doing for this whole video. Even though the shows share similar vibes in regards to them both being character dramas within the same universe, created by the same people, they have many differences as well. Unlike Breaking Bad's constant life or death high stakes, Better Call Saul is a more grounded show that instead focuses more on its characters. Since Better Call Saul has smaller stakes that just focuses on characters' day-to-day lives and reputations instead of the life or death situations that Breaking Bad is known for, the characters in Better Call Saul become more relatable in a way that Breaking Bad never was. Better Call Saul is truly an amazing character study that fully breaks these characters down to their core in regards to what life events made them act the way they do, what their motives are, and how they obtain them. Better Call Saul created the perfect combination of fleshing out already well-known characters, all with adding more amazing original characters as well. On one hand, you have pre-existing characters such as Saul, Mike, and Gus, who are now given an in-depth look at their past while bringing in new backstories to emphasize how they ended up being where they were by the time the events of Breaking Bad occurred. On the other hand, the show also created magnificent original characters such as Kim, Howard, Chuck, Nacho, and Lalo to level the playing field. Although the show did mainly focus on Breaking Bad fan favorites, its cast of new characters proved to be just as, if not even more interesting, effectively creating many fan favorites of their own as well. Fans became equally as interested in watching the Breaking Bad characters evolve into their Breaking Bad counterparts as they did watching these new characters rise with their own stories, all of creating the mystery of where all these new original characters will end up by the events of Breaking Bad that causes them not to be in the original story. For Breaking Bad characters, look at Saul for example. There will always be a "the moment Jimmy became Saul" meme, just like there was a "the moment Walt became Heisenberg" meme, but the reality is that the transition of these characters were incremental throughout their each own respective shows. So whereas the premise of Jimmy is what problem does becoming Saul Goodman solve, the premise of Mike is why exactly does he work as a criminal, what motivates him, and how does it further his Breaking Bad story. Absolutely love Mike's character. I'll be doing a full retrospective on him here in the near future, and it's so interesting to see how Mike corrupts and compromises his own moral code as he devolves into the hitman that we know from Breaking Bad. Then as far as original Better Call Saul characters go, take a look at Kim, Nacho, or even Howard. The story arc of Kim becoming a successful lawyer only to realize what truly makes her happy is fascinating as she becomes an overconfident con artist of her own rights who becomes way in over her head. Then there's Nacho, the man who originally started out as a gangster drug dealer who won our hearts by his morals and ethics, motivating himself to get out of the criminal world not only to save his own life, but eventually his father's as well. And then as far as villains go, we have Gus Fring and all the Salamancas, but we get a new Salamanca, Lalo, who is just such a breath of fresh air. Even though Gus is just such an incredible and iconic villain, Lalo may take the throne as the best Better Call Saul Breaking Bad villain of all time. It's just that good. The mix of original versus new characters works brilliantly in this show, with the new characters earning the spotlight and fan bases that the original characters had already gotten from Breaking Bad. And it's great to see them interact with each other in such ways that further add subtext to Breaking Bad, such as for example how Hector ended up in his wheelchair. It's just brilliant. And back to the premise of the show, in regard to Saul, there is a moment in Better Call Saul Season 6 Episode 9 where we see Jimmy lose the final thing stopping him from becoming full-on Saul Goodman 24/7 in order to distract himself from his past and being alone with his own thoughts. But that truly is just the final straw, as there are many small moments throughout the show that implies how Jimmy was pushed towards being Saul in the first place. Since the creators have already proven themselves to create such in-depth and fascinating characters from Breaking Bad, it's no surprise that they'd be able to replicate their own formula into creating new and interesting characters within the universe for Better Call Saul. Although Better Call Saul did feature many Breaking Bad cameos, it wasn't just for a cash grab or a flimsy attempt at fan service just for the sake of it. They only used Breaking Bad characters if they served the plot. So for example, even though we do eventually see Walt in the show, it serves the current story of Better Call Saul in that moment, and it's not just Walt walking down the street past someone or randomly scrubbing someone's car at the car wash. Vince, Peter, Tom, and the rest of the team held their fan service expectations at a very high level, where if they were going to bring in familiar faces from the original show, it would have to have significance to the current Better Call Saul plot. This is a brilliant way to handle cameos, as it assures that they all aid in propping up Better Call Saul's story. At the end of the day, even though we got glimpses into certain Breaking Bad characters, they only focused on how to support the current situations happening within the show at the time. Now, one major problem with prequel shows is plot armor when we're using characters that are in the original. For example, since we know Saul, Mike, and Gus are in Breaking Bad, that means they absolutely cannot die during Better Call Saul. End of story. Since the creators know that certain fan favorites can't die since they're alive in the future when Breaking Bad takes place, they're very self-aware of the plot armor that their characters have. Due to this, it's not often that these characters get into life and death situations, as they don't want plot armor to drive the show. But at the same time, since these life and death situations are so few and far between, when they do eventually happen, it just makes them so much more impactful due to them being such a rare occurrence. Better Call Saul is one of the only shows that can make you fear the lives of characters that have irrefutable plot armor due to being in the original, and that is a huge accomplishment in itself. Just take Season 5 Episode 8 Bagman for example. It's not often that Better Call Saul involves itself in life or death situations that Breaking Bad is known for, so when it rarely does happen, it puts a huge emphasis on the impact that these scenarios have for the main characters. Even though we knew that Jimmy and Mike had survived their adventure out in the desert, the build-up and execution of Bagman is so brilliant it makes you worry about and feel for these characters that have irrefutable plot armor. The shootout in Bagman does an excellent job of putting you in Jimmy's shoes as you witness the traumatizing gore and violence right alongside him. Never in a show have I ever been so worried for characters that I know for a fact cannot die. Throughout Jimmy and Mike's experience in the desert alongside each other, you truly feel for the lengths that these characters are going through in order to not only accomplish their goals, but to just survive in general as well. The show has you follow them through all the trials and tribulations that this situation pushes upon them, all while still keeping the roots of what the show is, a brilliant character study that elaborates on how Jimmy and Mike bond with each other while fighting for their lives. You experience the same shock and awe that they do while going through what they're dealing with, and when they finally get to their rock bottom moment, you really feel it, along with the desperation that they persevere through in order to secure themselves another day. Another prime example is the events of the climax to Lalo's story during the middle of Season 6. The 607 cliffhanger had Lalo holding Jimmy and Kim at gunpoint just after killing a main character. Since Lalo had just taken out such an important person without a second thought, it truly broke any plot armor that we felt towards Jimmy and Kim. We knew that Jimmy would survive, but how? Also, any plot armor that had built up around Kim throughout the entirety of Better Call Saul was just thrown out the window, as we have always worried about what caused Kim to not be around during the events of Breaking Bad. Could Lalo kill Kim, and if so, why leave Jimmy alive? The events that unfold during 607 and 608 were some of the most intense moments that I've seen not only out of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, but television as a whole. From holding both Jimmy and Kim at gunpoint and just seeing the fear in their eyes, to tying up Jimmy and forcing Kim to go on her little solo mission, viewers were sitting at the end of their seats while wondering how this would all tie up loose ends that have been teased throughout the show for years. There's also the whole Lalo versus Gus situation as well. Although we knew that Gus wasn't going to die, it was still incredibly tense, wondering how or if he'd be able to outsmart Lalo and come out of the situation on top. The cat and mouse games between Lalo and Gus from season 4 to season 6 of Better Call Saul rivals the original cat and mouse game between Walt and Gus during Breaking Bad. Although the outcome was slightly predictable, the show did an excellent job portraying the fear within Gus while having to face off against Lalo. During these examples, such as Bagman or the Lalo arc, the show did such a good job at putting these characters with irrefutable plot armor into insane life or death situations and making you worry about them in such a way that it almost made you forget that these characters have plot armor in the first place. Even with odds pinned against it from the start, Better Call Saul managed to break the mold from being in Breaking Bad's shadow and earn its own respect to be acknowledged as a brilliant TV show of its own. Although Better Call Saul does often use elements from Breaking Bad to its advantage, it's in kind of the same tasteful way that they tackle cameos, usually done in Easter eggs of certain locations, props, camera angles, or dialogue that further moves forward the interest of the current Better Call Saul story. The show learned to stand on its own 2 feet with its amazing cast of characters and brilliantly written story, which can at times be incredibly relatable due to its interesting character study method on how they all progress throughout the seasons. Remember that Better Call Saul is made by the Breaking Bad creators, which means that they have more experience under their belt. It's interesting going back to watch the beginning few seasons of Breaking Bad versus the end of Better Call Saul, just to see the difference in production and how much the creators have grown over the years from creating both shows back to back. The creators took everything they learned from Breaking Bad and applied it to Better Call Saul. Because of this, even though Breaking Bad is amazing even from the first season, in my opinion, Better Call Saul is overall more professionally produced, directed, and written due to the experience that the creators already had from creating the original. Not only that, but their ways of storytelling within this character study just kept getting better and better. Take for example the way that the shows handle cliffhangers. In my opinion, the 2 shows have it down to a science where they know how to handle cliffhangers and get it done right. When an episode ends off on a cliffhanger or a major story beat, they don't start the next episode with a ton of fluff or filler. They cut straight to brass tacks and immediately show you the outcome of the cliffhanger from the previous episode's ending. This really keeps the story going to hit all those necessary beats that gives us dopamine instead of just annoying the audience by dragging out the answers that they want to see. Better Call Saul is well written in general, with interweaving arcs between the lawyer and criminal/cartel sides of the show that, when they clash, create peak television due to its climactic results. Better Call Saul also potentially has better cinematography than Breaking Bad, which again is all subject to opinion. Breaking Bad is the GOAT, but since the creators knew what they were doing, they took the lessons that they learned from Breaking Bad and applied it to Better Call Saul in ways that gives us marvelous storytelling in the form of beautiful symbolism. How Better Call Saul has never won an Emmy for cinematography just baffles my mind. The fact that Better Call Saul mastered not only being a prequel but a sequel at the same time as well is truly astounding. Although most of the show is set about 4 years before Breaking Bad, each season of Better Call Saul, as you know, started with a tease of the post-Breaking Bad timeline with Saul in hiding under his new alias, Gene Takovic. This was especially intriguing for the first 4 seasons of Better Call Saul due to it being the only post-Breaking Bad timeline content that we had ever seen at that point. Sure, Breaking Bad has an amazing ending, but it did leave some questions up to interpretation in regard to surviving characters such as Jesse, Saul and his workers, and Walt's family. Now, between Season 4 and Season 5 of Better Call Saul, we did get El Camino, which was a full-on sequel in the form of a Netflix movie showing the events of Jesse Pinkman post-Breaking Bad, but it mainly only focused on him, and in reality, all happened within a short time frame as he tried to acquire the necessary funds to escape Albuquerque. When Better Call Saul Season 5 and eventually Season 6 came around, the show essentially ended its prequel story with 4 more episodes to go, which wound up all taking place in the full-on Gene timeline post-Breaking Bad and also post-El Camino as well. We got answers on what happened to some of Walt's family, such as Skyler and Marie, along with answering what happened to characters such as Francesca, Saul, obviously, and even Huel. Plus, we get the long-awaited answer on why Kim isn't around during the events of Breaking Bad, along with what her fate truly became. Better Call Saul breaks the prequel mold in multiple ways, not only by adding well-loved original characters to create a mystery on what their fates are in place of Breaking Bad characters who have their fates already sealed, but also since Better Call Saul is technically a sequel hidden within a prequel. Due to this, it essentially negates the stigma of, oh well, a prequel is boring or pointless because we already know what eventually happens, since Better Call Saul does eventually tell the sequel story to Breaking Bad by the end of the show. It's true that Better Call Saul was created with the idea in mind that most viewers have already seen Breaking Bad. Take for example the Breaking Bad versus Better Call Saul Gus reveal. Now during Breaking Bad, we didn't know who Saul's connection was that he was setting Walt up with, so they teased Gus's face on screen multiple times as a regular Los Pollos manager until eventually revealing that he was the connection. With Better Call Saul, the creators assume that you already know who Gus is, so when they tease him this time, they just show his uniform kinda blurry while keeping his face out of sight until he finally confronts Jimmy in Los Pollos, all while Jimmy is completely unaware of what we know about Gus and his secret drug empire. You will gain more appreciation for Better Call Saul if you have already seen Breaking Bad, but watching Better Call Saul by itself is a valid option. Many people have seen Better Call Saul without having seen Breaking Bad and enjoy Better Call Saul for what it is, either due to the character drama or even just the lawyer aspect of the show. It's true that the Gene timeline stuff would get a bit confusing, but just taking the prequel story at face value really works when it comes to its own story. Watching Better Call Saul also makes you appreciate the years worth of effort that went into not only Jimmy setting himself up as Saul Goodman, but with Mike and Gus setting up their drug empire. It really makes you witness Breaking Bad from a different perspective as you witness Walt become the catalyst to break the wheel and destroy everything that the characters took so long to set in motion during the events of Better Call Saul. The debate between Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul on which show is better has many arguments towards both shows, but the fact that it's even debated as much as it is shows a clear sign that Better Call Saul did live up to the high expectations that Breaking Bad fans had, which is an accomplishment of itself. Now the two shows are tied thematically and both look at similar questions within the same universe from different viewpoints, but Better Call Saul does such a great job standing on its own 2 feet that it's not even an equal comparison. Breaking Bad is on more of a grandiose scale of life and death stakes, while Better Call Saul takes time focusing so much more on analyzing its own characters and the emotional drama between them that it has a completely different feel to it. Comparing the two shows does feel like apple to oranges to me since they are very different even though they may fall in the same category. So this video just summarizes some of the many reasons why Better Call Saul was able to break out of Breaking Bad's shadow and become its own respected form of entertainment, which is increasingly hard to do when it comes to spin-off shows, especially prequels. I believe that anyone setting out to create a successful prequel should look at all that Better Call Saul has accomplished as a new standard in order to hopefully learn from it and to one day strive to hit the same levels that Better Call Saul has reached. Let me know any other reasons as to why you may think that Better Call Saul broke the prequel mold in the comments. I'd love to hear your takes on this very broad topic. I'd appreciate a like on the video and remember to subscribe and hit the bell notification for updates on when I post new content for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Support the channel's Patreon, that'll be linked in the description, or simply click the super thanks button under the video to help support the channel financially. But most importantly, I thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.